Good morning, everyone. Today is our Water Commission meeting for March 18, 2021. So if we can call the meeting to order and if we can have the roll call, please.
Okay. Commissioner Cooney?
Present.
Commissioner Young?
Here.
Vice Chair Davis?
Here.
And Chair Keller?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any changes to the agenda, Ms. Flessy?
Chair Keller, there are no changes to the agenda today.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Do we have any public comment at this point?
Chair Keller, I do not see any hands raised at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. So we'll move on to consent items, and we have two items on the consent list. One of them is the minutes of the previous meeting, and the other one is the contract for construction management of the digester dome replacement and cleaning project and the recycled water distribution pump station upgrades. So do we need to have any discussion on these? Any comments? Do I have a motion to approve these?
Motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. Can we have the roll call, please?
Yes. Commissioner Cooney?
Yes.
Commissioner Young?
Yes.
Vice Chair Davis?
Yes.
And Chair Keller?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So we are going to be moving now to our administrative items. And the first one is the sewer lateral inspection program updates and administrative guidelines. And it will be Ms. Galen Fair, but Ms. Flessy, if you want to sort of introduce the topic. Or Ms. Fair, if you want to go ahead.
I actually would love to. I'm super excited. This is something close to my heart. I am excited to introduce our new team. We are now fully staffed in our SLIP program, our sewer lateral inspection program. And I'm excited to introduce Ms. Galen Fair, who's our water quality superintendent and is our superintendent of the SLIP program. So, Ms. Fair.
Thank you, Ms. Flessy. Chair Keller, commissioners, thank you so much for the opportunity to present to you some of the updates that we've had to the sewer lateral inspection program over the last couple of years. And Mariana Cruz, who is our SLIP SLIP program administrator, will be helping me out with the presentation today. So you'll see her pop up in a moment. Next slide, please. So today, what we're going to talk about, we're going to give you some background to the SLIP program. We will tell you about all of the great upgrades we've done to the program over the last several months. We're going to introduce a new software interface that we're using with our program. We will discuss the COVID-19 response in regards to the SLIP program, and then we will also talk about our administrative guidelines. Next slide. So background first. What is a sewer lateral? So this program is all about sewer laterals. So first I thought we would tell you what a sewer lateral is. So a sewer lateral is the buried pipe that connects a house or a building to the city's publicly owned sewer main. It is privately owned infrastructure, and we are estimating that there is approximately 300 miles of this privately owned infrastructure in the city of Santa Barbara. And just to give you something to compare to, our public system, the city's sewer system, is a little over 250 miles. So it's the same amount of infrastructure that the city does not maintain. So it's really important for this program to get the education out to the public that the property owners are responsible for maintaining their private lateral and the Y connection or the connection to the city sewer. So it really is their responsibility, but it is our job to educate them. Next slide. So one of the reasons this is so important to get the public to understand that they own their sewer lateral, first that they have one, next that they own it, is because we do have a number of private spills. We call them private lateral sewer discharges. And you can see from this graph that we have had right around 30 on average for the last several years. And these are just the spills that the city has responded to. So ones that they have called and the city crews have responded to. We anticipate that at least double is occurring out in the city, and we're just not being informed of it, that property owner will hire a plumber to do the cleanup. So it's really important. It's important for public health and the environment. And the city does voluntarily report these private spills to the regional board. And it's just sort of a way that we track ourselves and see if our program has made any improvements over the years. Next slide. So a little bit about the history of the SLIP program. So it was developed in 2006 to address the failing laterals and increase public awareness of the need to maintain private laterals. City Council passed an ordinance that required us to develop this program, and the program requires property owners to inspect their private laterals under certain conditions. And we'll get into what some of those conditions are in the next couple slides. The sewer lateral inspection program continues to grow. Obviously, we've had a lot of iterations since 2006, and we're being really responsive to what we're hearing from our community. We're getting a lot of stuff on Nextdoor. We get a lot of stuff on EdHat. So we take pride in reading all of the comments from our public there and trying to form our program so that we're addressing some of those needs that these folks are letting us know they're having. Next slide. So the sewer lateral inspection program, the inspections are triggered by a number of items. So the first one I'll talk about is permit initiated. So typically these are the ADUs that folks are trying to build on their property, or maybe they're remodeling, and they will be required to do a lateral inspection if they are adding more than 400 square feet, or if they're adding 2 or more new plumbing fixtures to the site. Another one we've mentioned already is the private lateral spill. So if a property has experienced a private lateral spill, obviously there's something going on, there's a blockage or something that's happening on that private lateral. So we want to understand and help the property owner understand what's happening. So we request an inspection from them in those cases to get to the bottom of the issue. Another one is defects observed at a connection during city main inspections. So I mentioned the city has our own infrastructure. We go out, we do a really great job of maintaining those sewer lines, videoing them, doing inspections to make sure that our public assets are free and in good working condition, free of roots or issues. We maintain them, make sure they are conveying the sewage as they should. When we do go out and do these video inspections on our own mains, what we are finding and what we can see is the connection of the private lateral to the city main. If there's any issues at that connection point, be it roots, maybe there's a fracture or a crack. If we see those when we are inspecting our public mains, we will notify the customer, the public, and ask for more information. Hey, we noticed there's this issue. Please provide us a video inspection of your entire sewer lateral, because if there's an issue at this point, there are likely issues in other sections of your lateral. This part of our program has seems to have exploded in the last couple of months, partly because we are really trying to coordinate with other departments within the city. The streets department, we have all of these beautiful new overlaid streets, and we're really trying to coordinate with them, get in front of that schedule where they are overlaying the streets to notify our customers. If they're on a street that will be overlaid, we want to have them video their lateral in case there is any repair work that needs to be done, so that we can get that repair work done before a street is overlaid. So that has caused a lot of additional work for us, but we're trying to do this in a unified aspect. And then the last trigger is our commercial program. So we have a commercial program that takes into account the commercial, industrial, common interest, condos, developments, and they are on a 10-year inspection cycle. So regardless of condition of the lateral or the connection that we're seeing, they're required to inspect their laterals every 10 years. We are noticing that we've had to pivot a couple times with this program, so we've pushed out some of the requests for those commercial developments. So it's really looking more like a 15-year program. So one of the recommendations we will ask as part of our updates today is to update that to a 15-year program cycle. Just makes it a little bit easier for us to handle it. Next slide. So a little bit about the SLIP process. We understand that it can be very confusing to somebody receiving a letter, not understanding what the process is. So let you guys know what our process is. First, it starts off with an inspection notification letter based on any one of those triggers we had just talked about. In that case, a property owner will hire a certified plumber. That certified plumber will inspect the lateral, and they will submit the video and inspection form to our SLIP staff for review. Property owner has about 60 days to submit the video to us. Once we receive the video, we will review and determine if there are any defects or if the lateral has been properly maintained. If we do find defects, we will call those defects out. We will send out a repair notification letter to the property owner. And this is really our chance to work with the property owner, communicate with them, develop a plan for them, with them. There is a lot of variability in lateral materials and the different defects that are occurring. So we can set up one-on-ones with property owners and guide them through the process. Once we've had that chance to communicate with them, they will decide on a solution, hire a plumber or contractor, complete the repairs, and then at that point, they will have a certificate of compliance issued. And that whole repair process, we are asking 120 days for them to complete that. We understand that there are extenuating circumstances, and everybody has those things come up. So we do grant extensions on a case-by-case basis. And we just really want folks to be in communication with us, to let us know that they are working on the problem. We're more than willing to offer them an extension if we know that they're actively working towards getting things completed. So those 60 and 120 days are not hard deadlines. Next slide, please. So next I'll talk about some of the upgrades that we've done in the last couple of years, more in the recent months. Staffing, repair options. We've got a new assistance program. Next slide. So one of the big things is staffing. We have moved, the SLIP program has moved to its own independent program. We were underneath wastewater collections previously, and we really only had one dedicated person to the program. We were borrowing somebody from engineering. We had a superintendent who was overseeing other things as well. So we really found over the years, as we were evaluating what this program needed, we needed more staffing to really be able to help the community, help the public work through this. So we brought on additional staff. We've got myself, I'm the water quality superintendent. I'm also overseeing the lab and desal operations. We have Mariana Cruz. She is our SLIP program administrator. Dale Escobar is one of our SLIP project coordinators, and he's been with the program for several years. So he brings a lot of institutional knowledge, which is really great. And Isaac Garcia is our newest SLIP project coordinator. And he was working in collections before, so he also has a lot of knowledge with the system. Next slide, please. So next, we're going to talk about the lateral connection repair options. These are one of the cost control measures and just giving more options to our property owners when they do have to repair their lateral connection. So this is simply the lateral connection replacement or rehabilitation. As I mentioned earlier, there is a lot of variability in the lateral construction. You will get a wide range of quotes between you and your neighbor if you're trying to do repairs, different methods. So those all bring in a bunch of variability. We have we now have 3 options for the lateral connection replacement, and all of these we have gone out and gotten bids, so they are the lowest price that we have found, and they really do provide a baseline for costs. It allows the customer to understand that, hey, the city would pay this much for this, so they're able to take advantage of that lower cost. And it does really emphasize the importance of quality control for the connection replacement. The lateral connection does connect to the sewer main, so we want to have some control and input on when that portion of the main is being replaced. Next slide, please. So here are the 3 connection replacement or repair options that we have developed. Repair option 1 is a sewer tap or sewer connection replacement. This is the original option that we've been working with throughout the program. And a property owner will hire a plumber. A plumber will dig the pit. So this is, just to be clear, this is for the lateral connection. It's usually done in the right of way or the street. So this is what brings on the most challenges for property owners. So in this option, the property owner will hire the plumber. The plumber will excavate the pit in the street. And if there is other work that is needed on the lateral, the plumber can do it at that point in time. But then we do have a city contractor come in and replace just the lateral connection. And then the city contractor's job is done. The plumber will fill in the pit and do any other additional repairs that are needed. Our repair option 2 is a sewer tap replacement with excavation. So in this case, it's just the city contractor who's doing the work. The city contractor comes in, they dig the pit, expose the lateral connection, and then they replace it, backfill. This option is a great one, but if there is any other work needed on the lateral, it might not be the best option. So that's why we really want our customers to talk to us beforehand so we can evaluate what's going to be the best option for them. And then our last repair option is our sewer connection rehab or Top Hat. And Top Hat's a brand name, so in industry, everyone refers to it as a Top Hat. It is a rehabilitation of the sewer lateral connection. And the reason it's called a Top Hat is it looks like a little top hat if you were to pull it out of the sewer. So this is done with cured in place pipe technology. It's basically a felt and a resin, and it hardens in place, and it will seal and effectively renew the lateral connection. And you wouldn't need to excavate in this situation. And this is always done in conjunction with our capital projects when we are rehabilitating our sewer mains. Because it's done in conjunction with our capital projects, we have to ensure that the property owner is on a lined main, or it will be a lined main. So this option is not necessarily available to everybody. Again, the reason we want to reach out and have those discussions with the property owner. Next slide, please. So next we'll talk about our video assistance program. I'm going to pass it off to Mariana Cruz, and she's going to walk you through it.
All right, good morning, Chair Keller, members of the Water Commission. My name is Mariana Cruz, and I am the SPLIT Program Administrator. I'm here today to talk to you about the Video Assistance Program. Next slide, please. The Video Assistance Program, or the VAP as we're calling it, is a program that was established to really help property owners with the first step of the split process. As Galen showed earlier, there's several steps to receiving a certificate of compliance, and our goal is to help them get started with that process. With the VAP, participants will use a city contractor to conduct the inspection of their lateral, and that contractor will then submit their video and inspection form on their behalf of the city. The VAP participants will be given a $300 credit per inspection, and if their inspection is over that $300 budget, they will be responsible for paying the difference. Next slide, please. And in order to fund the VAP, the SPLIT program will be reallocating funds So currently, in order to help property owners, we are paying to waive the public works permit and inspection fees. Our program is covering that cost on their behalf. However, with the VAP, we'll be able to help 3 to 4 times more property owners by paying for that inspection from the beginning to get them started. The program will be on a first come, first served basis, which means if for some reason we run out of funding, they won't be able to participate. However, since this is a trial year, it's our first year running this program, it may take some time for people to learn about it regardless of our outreach. And one of the reasons we're really excited about the VAP is consistency of videos. So as Galen mentioned, different folks hire different plumbers to conduct the repair and the inspections. However, this will allow us to have all videos of VAP participants of the same quality and submitted in the proper format. Next slide, please. In addition to the VAP, we'll be introducing a software interface called Forward Lateral, and this will also help with the simplicity and consistency of the program. Next slide, please. The software is called Forward Lateral, which is an interface that will help connect the city, the property owner, and the contractor. And it's kind of like a one place where everything can be found. The inspector will be able to submit their videos onto Forward Lateral, and the property owner and the city will be able to track the entire process of the inspection. And we're also hoping to have Forward Lateral be mandatory for all city certified CCTV inspectors starting July 1st of this year. Next slide, please. The cost of Forward Lateral is $30 per inspection. However, those who are enrolled in the video assistance program, the VAP will cover their Forward Lateral fee. Next slide, please. And there's many benefits of Forward Lateral, including transparency, efficiency, communication, and storing of data all in one place. And this is really important, especially in terms of efficiency and time. The property owner will have access to their video. It'll be stored in Forward Lateral. They can go in and check it anytime they want. And that also cuts back on staff time making copies of videos or needing to find a way to meet up with contractors to obtain the videos from them. The property owner will be able to track the entire process of their inspection. They'll know when the video is submitted by the plumber. They'll know when the city has reviewed their video. They'll be able to see comments on both ends. It really is one place for everything to be stored. Next slide, please. Okay, and I'll hand it back to Galen, who will be sharing about our COVID-19 and SLIP response.
Thank you, Mariana. So COVID-19 and SLIP, just like every other program within the city, we have had to pivot and make some adjustments due to COVID-19. Next slide, please. So one of the things we've really been working towards the last few years is our enhanced public outreach and education. Pre-COVID, we were doing one-on-one appointments, having after hours, office hours, as we were calling them. And folks would come down to El Estero or meet us at Public Works, and we could talk in person to our customers and walk them through the process. We have really had to pivot, as has everybody, to a virtual format. However, we have found that it has been really successful. Folks don't have to take time off work to drive down somewhere and meet somebody. They really can just pop on their computer or their phone and have a discussion with us about their case. One of the other really great things that we have done is our virtual trainings. Every year we do a plumber certification course that has over 100 plumbers in the same room taking our certification course. There are logistical things to work out, parking, space big enough, enough food, coffee and donuts for everybody. And we've been able to shift, and our plumbing community actually has given us we've asked for feedback on these virtual trainings, and they've really liked having it virtually. So that's always a bonus and a benefit that we didn't anticipate from COVID. Social media, city publications, and videos, these are some of the outreach and education that we are doing. Because we don't have a physical presence anymore with our public, we're really pushing through social media. The image you have there is a screenshot from our Facebook page. So we're pushing out some of our materials. This one is showing you the expected lifespan of a sewer lateral in comparison to other household items, and using CNIB. So it's, I think we're just using using things more digitally these days as a response to COVID. Next slide. One thing that we did have to do with COVID, as we know, there have been some financial issues that everybody in the community has faced due to COVID. So in March, at the beginning of the pandemic, we initiated a moratorium that lasted through about September of last year. And during that time, we did not send out any notification letters for inspection, and paused basically with the program. Started back up in September. We realized if we paused any longer, there could be some issues with our system, or we would just get really backlogged with that 10-year commercial program. So we started it back up. But part of the moratorium, we did suspend our fines. So we do have warnings and fines that we will give some of our customers if we just haven't had any communication from them on whether they're working on the project or not. So it is a little bit of an impetus for the property owner. If they get a warning letter, oh shoot, I better start moving on this. And then if we get no responses, we do administer fines in some cases. So we suspended those during this time, and they are still suspended. But what we're finding is our workload is continuing to grow. Even though we had the moratorium, during that time we paused, now we have to play catch up. And in addition to the streets overlay project that I mentioned earlier, we're really trying to push to get some of these cases completed. So just to give you a little idea of our workload is we have currently over 1,900 open cases, so cases that are in progress at some portion of the process. That's a lot. That's a lot to manage and keep track of. We're doing it, we're trying, but it's a lot. And then the other aspect to that is the overdue cases. So these overdue cases, 1,500 of them. These are cases that have passed that 60-day or 120-day mark, and we haven't had a mechanism to send out another letter and say, hey, warning, you guys haven't submitted what we have asked for, please jump back on the project and start again. So what we're really asking for is a recommendation to reinstate these administrative warnings and fines effective at the beginning of the fiscal year. I think everybody's really itching towards that summer, fall area when we might get back to what was normal. So I think that July 1st date is a good time to reinstate those warnings and fines. Next slide. Administrative guidelines update. Next slide, I'll jump into it. So the administrative guidelines are required for our SLIP program. It's in the municipal code that we must have administrative guidelines. So anybody in the program, plumbers, anybody that's involved can understand what we're doing and how we're doing it. So those guidelines have not been updated since 2010. We have had so many changes in the last several months, let alone the last decade. So now we are in the process of updating our administrative guidelines. I've talked about some of the upgrades we've done to SLIP already, our video assistance program, the city approved web-based program, that's our forward lateral, our software interface that Mariana had spoken about, our new repair options, and then the incredible amount of outreach materials that we've developed over the years. So these are the items that we need to add to our administrative guidelines. So we want to make it as current as possible and really reflect what the program is today. The Public Works Director does have the authority to approve the updates, the administrative guideline updates. But we wanted to bring it to the commission and let you guys know all the great things we've done working on the program and keep you in the loop, get some recommendations from you guys on what you think we should be doing. So that's why we're presenting it here today. Next slide, please. So next steps. Update our administrative guidelines based on all of these upgrades and updates that we have mentioned. And along with that, some of the associated municipal code sections will be updated as well. We will be going to ordinance committee on April 20th with those municipal code updates. And then we will be going to council at the end of April and beginning of May to introduce and hopefully adopt that ordinance. Next slide. So what we are asking from the commission today, we are asking that you recommend the administrative guidelines be revised based on the updates received today and recommend that you reinstate the sewer lateral inspection program, administrative warnings, and fines effective July 1st. So with that, we will take any questions or comments that you have.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fair, Ms. Flessy, and Mariana. So yeah, do we have any questions or comments? First of all, great presentation. I mean, I think it was very useful to have the just reminder of what this all is all about, and then provide us, the step-by-step of what you've done. You guys have done a really tremendous job in reaching out to the public and making it much more accessible, affordable, and presenting it. But do we have any questions? Yes, Ms. Cooney.
Yeah, so I also sort of have a question maybe based on, things that I've read on Nextdoor or, community forums or whatever, which is like, how are you guys working to sort of like build trust with homeowners? Like I know, right, that, or like to communicate with it, like, so like if I'm not getting an AUD and I don't think there's anything wrong with my house, like, why would I want to look? Because, right, my risk is not to be a pain, but right, my risk is like my sewer works right now. Why do I want to check it and potentially have to pay all this money? So is there, right, like not the argumentative, right? But like, what is the assurance that, oh, if I get this video, then like and I don't think there's a problem, and then the city's going to see it and they're going to make me pay $10,000 and, and it's like, it's a real concern, right? And my house is almost 100 years old and I'm certain that, or I don't think anyone has looked at the sewer in a while. So like, what is sort of like the motivation, like, or like if I wanted to look at it, could I look at it and keep that information? Not that I want to write on the water commission, but like as a, private person with a bank account that I might be concerned about. Is that being addressed at all?
Chair, Commissioner Cooney, Chair Keller, yes, you are 100% correct. These are the concerns that the community has. What we really want to educate folks on is just because sewage is not backing up on your property and is going away like we want it to, doesn't mean that there aren't issues. So one of the graphic that we did show you about the average lifespan of a lateral, it's about 50 years, 50 to 70, depending on the material. So Santa Barbara, a lot of the stuff was built in the 20s. We're at that 100-year mark. There was a boom again in the 50s. So we're at that 70-year mark. So the laterals they've broken down over time. They're at the end of their life. So we're trying to educate folks on that first and foremost, that there is a lifespan to it. If your roof, unfortunately, like a roof, you would see the water coming through if it was leaking. With a lateral, you don't see it leaking. It's underground, out of sight, out of mind, so to speak. So what we're really excited about with this video assistance program is we are basically offering to pay the property owner. Hey, we're going to pay for your inspection because you really should know what's going on in your lateral. And second, it gives us the consistent quality that we are looking for in these videos. All of the plumbers attend a certification course every year, so there is consistency throughout. But some different cameras, different lighting, etc. You had a lot in that question, so I'm trying to make sure I answer it all. Go ahead, Chair Keller.
Yeah, if I may, I think we don't want to be certainly, we don't want to create fear. It's not the idea. Is not to create fear mongering. I understand.
I wasn't trying to do
No, but I mean, we
I'm sorry.
could, and that's the danger. We want to avoid it. But I had a problem with my sewer lateral several years ago, and it was right before my daughter's wedding, which was terrible anyway. But it broke. I mean, it basically plugged up, and so the back wastewater begins to come up, and the cost was tremendous. And so I think that's the risk that people have, that you don't ever know when it's going to happen, and it's likely, like in our case, to happen at the worst moment when you really have guests coming to your home and you don't have a working sewer. So it gets really, really expensive. So again, I don't want, the idea is not to sort of do fear mongering, but the risk is there, and it's just important to have that there. Yeah.
Chair Keller,
So
Commissioner.
Catch it ahead of time, is it cheaper to fix? Sorry to jump in. Or is it just
No,
the price is what it is?
This is great. This is great conversations, and it's really great to have a new commissioner with new eyes, and because we've been working on this for quite a long time. And so really what we have done over the past 2 years, we've pivoted this program from a reactive kind of fear thing into an education program. This is what we're all of our repair options that we are providing is for education of the homeowner, and it's meant to empower the homeowner. So with this video assistance program, what we're trying to do is take that fear away from the homeowner so they can work with our administrators and our coordinators and come up with a game plan on how to repair their line in a way that is acceptable to them. Because sometimes, let's be honest, plumbers are not always honest. And so
Right.
we're trying to really educate the homeowner as to what it is that they need. And the sooner that they can get in there and investigate their lateral, the repairs won't be as much. Because if you can get in there and you have just minor cracks, rehabilitation compared to digging and replacing is probably about 3 times as much as just lining the sewer lateral. So we're trying to get in there and educate the public that there are options, and they're a lot cheaper of those options. But this video assistance program is just letting you know what you have. What do you have
Okay.
right now? And then you can work with our coordinators and come up with a game plan. And then that way you could take it to your plumber and be educated and be empowered and not accept anything that's over extravagant that you may not need.
Okay, I mean, you convinced me that I should look at my sewer laterals. So.
And if you have any questions on it, Commissioner Cooney, please contact us.
Or your friend,
Thank you so much, you guys.
or your friend.
Other questions or comments from other commissioners or Councilmember Sneddon?
I have a comment.
Yes. Commissioner,
10 years ago, I had a problem, right? We live in the west side. We had that orange board. Is that what it's called? The sewers that were orange. Yeah. Which this stuff is so out of sight, out of mind for the homeowner that it's unbelievable. I just wanted to say, and again, in response to Commissioner Cooney, the education value of this program for the homeowner is incredible. I mean, I thought I knew what was going on, and then all of a sudden we had this sewer problem, backup problem, like Arturo talked about, and I had no clue what I was dealing with. I had no clue where the Y was, which was I'm on a flag lot, and it's halfway down the hill, right? And so the education value of the program that basically have the homeowner, and I really loved your graphic that shows kind of like the life expectancy of various appliances and other things, that a sewer lateral is a similar type of facility, right? If your driveway was cracking and falling apart, you would replace it. Same thing, but this one's underground and you don't get to see it. So I just wanted to compliment you because I've seen over the last couple of years the growth of this program and the items that you're talking about here of helping the homeowner kind of take control of their own lives. Basically, it's just it's really amendable. Really great, commendable, very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Sneddon?
Thank you, Chair Keller. Is it time for comments or are you just having questions?
No, comments as well. Sure.
Okay.
I've learned so much in this program with each one of these presentations, and each time you make it more accessible for the public, better for us to understand. If we were in person, I'm sure you would be bringing in that physical why so we could understand what that even was. And, you know, I didn't know before you started bringing this to Water Commission that I was responsible for my own why. And I had the same response as Commissioner Cooney, like, oh, I better go get that checked because I had no idea about it. And the education, but not just that, but the accessibility that you keep building into this program each step of the way. Every time it's a new update that makes it better for the public, better for the ratepayers. And I'm just really appreciative of the work that you do on this. It's really, really commendable. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Anyone else, other questions or comments? Do we have any public comment?
Chair Keller, we do have public comment.
Okay, thank you.
Here we have Allison Thompson. I will unmute you and you have 2 minutes. Okay, Allison Thompson, go ahead.
Perfect. Good morning, Chair Keller and Commissioners. My name is Allison Thompson, and I'm the Operations and Policy Coordinator for Heal the Ocean. Heal the Ocean supports this program and is so excited to see the program's growth. It is a long-awaited revise, and the revise is fantastic. Ms. Fair and the rest of the Sewer Lateral Inspection Program team and staff have done a tremendous job expanding the program, updating it, and working on outreach with the community to ensure there are resources and information available for homeowners. The options provided to homeowners takes the fear and uncertainty out of the problem and empowers homeowners with knowledge and background on what can be a very complex and intimidating issue. Sewer laterals are vital to the health and safety of our community, and we hope this updated program will help keep private laterals updated, maintained, and working effectively. We support this program and applaud the work of staff. Way to go. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Thompson. I think that was really a very strong endorsement. We really appreciate it. And it's, of course, to the people who do this work every day, I think they're doing a tremendous job. Any other public comment?
Chair Keller, there is no more public comment at this time.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So we have these 2 recommendations at this point. Let's take a vote on that in terms of endorsing those recommendations. Commissioner Young, did you have any questions or just for the vote?
No questions. Do you need a motion to move
Yes,
the
I need a
recommendation?
motion, yes.
I'll make that motion to move both recommendations forward.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Guys, can we have the roll call, please?
Yes. Commissioner Cooney,
Yes.
Commissioner Young,
Yes.
Vice Chair Davis,
Yes.
and Chair Keller.
Yes, enthusiastically. Okay, well, thank you very much. So next in our agenda, we have, and I just lost my point. If you can put it up there, I lost my, okay, the proposed utility rates. Thank you. Mr. Hamilton, please provide that, and Ms. Fliss.
Thank you, Chair Keller. I'm excited to introduce Mr. Hamilton today to present our final results for our water rate study. This is our 3rd time, and hopefully we can have some great discussion about the long and hard work that has been done by Mr. Hamilton and HDR to get here on our water rate study.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ms. Flessy, Chair Keller, members of the Commission, Liaison Sneddon. Happy to be here today with Sean Korn from HDR Engineering to present the final proposed rates. I'm going to turn it over to him fairly quickly here, but I did want to make a couple quick notes before we jump right into it. If you looked in your packet that was sent out last week, we included an attachment, which was the draft Prop 218 notice. In that attachment, there were 2 highlighted sections. So there was a section for master meters that was highlighted. We were still finalizing that rate, and included in this presentation today, we will show you the proposed master meter fees. And Sean will explain a little bit more about, they kind of straddle the line between a rate and a fee. They do go on the water bill, but recuperate costs slightly differently. And then secondly, we had highlighted that in the model, we found that we had just inadvertently skipped over the 4-inch fire line rate. And when that was added back to the model is such that it kind of has ripple effects throughout. So there are small 1-2 penny differences in the presentation today that were different than what you saw in your packet, but really kind of immaterial changes. However, I just want to assure all the commissioners that what we're bringing forward today are the rates that will be going forward to the Finance Committee on March 30th and what we'll be recommending to continue with. Secondly, you may have noticed also in the staff report that there is it's going to be a combined report between solid waste and water, and we've only included the text in the report for water. However, when it goes to Finance Committee, there will be the sections added for solid waste as well. And then finally, before I turn this over, there are 2 rates for the irrigation agricultural customer class and irrigation for parks, recreation areas, and schools. And as we discussed at the meeting last month, we had recommended that we would move forward with phasing those rates in. And so the rates that we present today do carry that recommendation forward. And Mr. Korn will get more into that. So without any hesitation, please, Mr. Korn.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Good morning, Chair Keller, Water Commissioners, and Council Liaison Snedden. As Malcolm mentioned, I will walk you all through the final results of the rate study and talk through the process real briefly of how we establish the rates. On the next slide, we have our overview of the process. Remember, it's a 3-step process. So to meet the requirements of Prop 218, we need to develop the revenue requirement to determine the overall revenue needs of the utility over the rate setting period. We also look out long-term to make sure that there's nothing coming up in the near term that we need to start accounting for today and start adjusting rates today to minimize impacts. Once we know the overall costs of the water utility program, then we can equitably and proportionally allocate that to the different customer classes of service through the cost of service, and we'll talk through those results. And then as Mr. Hamilton mentioned, based on those 2 analyses, we developed the proposed rates. And really that year 1 of the proposed rates are the unit costs that come out of the cost of service based on how each customer class is provided service or what source of supply is provided to them, how those have been prioritized by the City Council, and then ultimately how those customers utilize the system. So as we go through this, we'll talk through briefly each of those components. Today, more of the focus is on the proposed rates rather than the revenue requirement and cost of service, but obviously we're willing to answer and discuss any questions on that aspect as well. And then we'll follow up with the next steps. On the next slide kicks off our the purpose of the study. And as we've talked about, really the goal is to develop proportional and cost-based rates that provide sufficient revenue to operate and maintain the city's water infrastructure and continue to provide service to your customers. As part of that process, we go through this analysis and development of the rate model to meet those requirements of Proposition 218. We do this by taking generally accepted methodologies, but they're tailored specifically to your system, how it operates, how it's being funded, and how your customers use the system on a monthly and annual basis. And as we go through that, we also don't want to lose sight of some of our prudent financial planning criteria, such as maintaining our legally required debt service coverage ratios, adequately reinvesting into the system to maintain that, the renewal and replacement aspect, as well as meeting the council target minimum reserve levels. On the next slide, we have the start of our overall revenue requirements. And the next slide provides the summary. And remember, as we've walked through this process, we really have a couple different components that build up our revenue requirement. It's our annual O&M expense. It's our rate-funded capital, that renewal and replacement funding that goes back into the system each year. It's any existing or future annual debt service payments, as well as any reserve funding, any funds that are being put into reserves to meet minimum reserves or to fund future capital improvements. As we go through this process, we're focused on the next 3 fiscal years. So fiscal year 22, 23, and 24. Now, in the prior discussions with the commission, we have talked about some of the key assumptions. When looking at the O&M, or the first blue bar, remember that that includes the impacts from the community choice energy implementation, as well as the current costs and projected costs to operate and maintain the utility. On the capital side, as we've talked about, we are transitioning to a higher level of ongoing capital investment to meet the council policy of replacing 2% of the city's water mains on an annual basis as we go through this. And remember that these costs, the operating and capital, so both rate funded capital and annual debt service, are funded entirely through the water utility enterprise fund revenue. So the revenues received from customers primarily, and some other additional revenue for ancillary services that go through the process. As we went through this, we looked at our current revenues. That's the solid bar, solid line, horizontal line going across the screen. That has a minimal change as we're assuming our current water demands today, with a slight uptick starting out into the 2024 time period based on that. So in order to meet the top of each of these bars, the sum of our operating and capital needs, we do need to raise rates, overall revenue levels and subsequent rates, 5% overall. And again, remember that 5% is system-wide. This is our first step of the process. And so overall, we need to increase revenues to fund our needs by 5%. So once we know that, the next slide starts our cost of service analysis. And on the next slide, we talk a little bit, I wanted to keep the slide like this in on why we do this. And our goal is to equitably and proportionally allocate that revenue requirement between the different customer classes of service. And we do this because almost all of our costs are joint costs. They're in place to serve all our different customer types, our residential, our multifamily, our commercial, and our irrigation customers. And so we go through a process to evaluate why and how we incur a cost and who benefits from that process or why we incur that cost. The whole ultimate end of our cost of service is the unit cost. Those unit costs become the rates in year one. So each time you do a cost of service study, this is a reset. So we reset the rates based on the cost of service. We adjust by the overall revenue percentage, that 5% in fiscal years 23 and 24 across the board to everybody. And then in order to raise rates again or increase rates, you would then need to go through another cost of service and Prop 218 process. And that would ultimately provide you the basis for unit costs and possibly a reset. Because each year we do a cost of service, we're basing it on the system costs for this upcoming rate setting year, as well as the customer characteristics, which can change from cost of service to cost of service. So the next slide shows our overall key assumptions. I've hit on a couple of these. We're focused on fiscal year 22. That's the year that we allocated and distributed to the customer classes of service. It's based on their current usage characteristics and system operation. And again, remember, this results in those unit costs that are the maximum proposed rates for each customer class of service. And that's based on how each customer class uses water and what source, and the priority of that source to come back and meet our requirements of meeting how we price water rates through Proposition 218. What this does then is provide you all and the City Council the basis to make any policy decisions, but understanding that these are the maximum rates that can be implemented based on the results of the analysis that's done periodically, in your case, every 3 to 5 years, to reevaluate cost of service, reset the rates if necessary, and continue on to that next process. So what this looked like for the fiscal year 2022 cost of service is on the next slide. And we put this on here graphically to look at that. The vertical black line is showing the system average. And so that's the 5% overall revenue change that we need to meet our operating and capital costs. The horizontal hashed lines for each customer group, single family, multifamily, recycled water, commercial, industrial, irrigation ag, irrigation rec, and irrigation urban, reflect the results of the cost of service, how they incur costs, the cost of that water supply, and how they use that water supply. And so the closer we are to the 5%, the better we are. And in general, high level, all customer classes, with the exception of irrigation ag and irrigation rec, are very close to that overall center. And that talks about how you've consistently completed cost of service analyses, reset them, adjusted, and move forward with those proposed adjustments. So overall, this is a good result, but we do know that we have these two outliers as part of that. And that's something we talked about last time when we met with the commission on how, from a policy perspective, we can move forward and transition those two customer classes. So as we take this information on the next slide, we can then take the cost of service results, and we can take the revenue requirements, so the overall cost of the system, plus how we allocate and distribute those costs to each customer class and design rates to meet that. So as we go through this process, the next slide talks a little bit about how we've developed the rates. So again, our cost of service unit costs provide us the maximum proposed rates for each of the customer groups or classes of service and rate schedules. We are not proposing a change to how you charge your customers. So no change to the structure or what they're used to seeing. It's really only a change in the level of each of those components. And there's really two components for each customer group or rate schedule. One is the fixed meter charge. That is the same for all customers with the exception of the private fire line charge, component. And so we set that on an equivalent basis, and then that is adjusted by meter size based on the meter equivalency or capacity that those larger meters can place on the system. On the variable or the consumption charge, that's based on each customer group's or rate schedule's overall cost based on the supply of water, the delivery of water, and the use of the system on an annual basis to come back and determine what that overall cost is. As we mentioned, the recommendation at the end of the last meeting and what is proposed in the rates today is a transition for irrigation agriculture and irrigation recreation customers to smooth those cost of service results. So in this case, we're not going to jump to the cost of service results in year one. We're going to smooth those out over the 3-year period and end the 3-year period at what that overall projection is. What that does is, again, it results in a minor reduction in revenue, very minimal overall as part of this process, given the size of those customer classes' revenue generation as part of the overall revenue needs of the utility. So based on that, we can go to the next slide and discuss the proposed rates that we've developed. These are the fixed monthly service charges. Going down the slide is the size of the meter. The majority of your customers are up in that 5/8, 3/4 inch meter basis, but we do have larger commercial customers and some multifamily customers with larger meter sizes. Those rates, if you look at the present rate column, the second column from the left, you will see that the present rate increases as we get to the larger meter sizes. That is based on those meter equivalencies or the capacities to reflect the demands that those larger meters place on the system. The proposed fixed monthly service charge based on meter size, you can see in fiscal year 2022, increases fairly minimally. It's roughly a 2.3% change, under 3% change for the majority of your customers with a 5/8 and 3/4 inch meter, and then slightly different for those larger meters just as the overall ratios are put into place. As we move into fiscal year 23 and 24, the right-hand two columns, you can see that those have been proposed as well based on an overall increase of 5% for each meter size. So again, we reset in fiscal year 2022 based on the cost of service, and then we adjust for the next 2 years based across the board based on the overall percentage change in revenue needs. On the next slide, we'll start talking about the consumption or volumetric charge. And for single family customers, it's a 3 and multifamily, it's a 3-tier increasing rate structure. So as you go through the tiers, you pay more based on the supply costs and the overall operating costs to provide that water. So the first tier for single family and for single family is 0 to 4. That's $4.44 currently. That would increase to $4.62 based on the cost of service analysis, for an increase of 18 cents per 100 cubic feet, or HCF. And remember that each HCF, or billing unit, is 748 gallons. So we've increased by about 4% for that. And then you can see in the fiscal year 23 and 24, we've increased that across the board by 5% for all customers. So that middle columns, those two middle columns, you can see the dollar change in each of those, as well as the percentage change overall for each of these customer classes based on the overall tiers for single family and multifamily. Recycled water is a uniform rate, and you can see that's increasing by about 3% based on the cost of providing that service. Commercial and industrial water, up to their allotment, you can see is $7.01 currently. That increases to $7.05 per HCF 100 cubic feet. And then the overall allotment increases a little bit larger based on the overall cost of the water for that next tier based on the prioritization. Again, based on cost of service in fiscal year 22, adjusted across the board for fiscal year 2023 and 24. The next slide continues our volumetric rates for our irrigation ag, irrigation rec customers. What we've done here in this proposal is adjusted the rates as evenly as we could through 2024. So the fiscal year 2022 impacts for both irrigation ag and irrigation rec are muted. So you can see irrigation ag is about a 10%, irrigation rec is a 7.2 on the up to budget component, the first tier of their budget component for their rate structure, rather than those cost of service results where we saw that irrigation rec and irrigation ag were up farther to the right of the overall adjustment. So that's been phased in over this 3-year period. In fiscal year 2024, those rates are at the levels that would be projected had we implemented the cost of service results, as well as the fiscal year 23 and 24 rate adjustments across the board. Irrigation urban also has a similar change, 6.3% and 8% in fiscal year 22 based on the cost of water supply and delivering those supplies to the customers. The next slide provides a summary of our auxiliary master meter fee. And this is what Mr. Hamilton referenced at the beginning of the meeting, this discussion, as a separate rate/fee. And really what this is a separate meter, given the configuration of trying to serve customers behind this meter, being able to set a single meter so that the city can account for all the water that goes through that meter, which then have sub-meters for maybe some of the different customers behind that. And so this is really comes back and is based on the actual cost to provide that service. So it sums up the overall operating and material and facility infrastructure requirements that are necessary to maintain these auxiliary meters. So they are charged to the water customers on the bill, but again, it's more of a fee setting process based on the specific service that these customers are receiving through this auxiliary master meter component. The next slide provides a summary of the private fire line charges. And so these are very similar to what the meter charges are for customers, but these are in addition or another charge on the bill for customers that have a separate fire service line to provide fire suppression. So when we look at buildings and we see the sprinklers up in the ceiling, generally speaking, those are served through a different line than the domestic water use. And based on the cost of providing that standby capacity or building the system big enough from a pipe, pump, storage perspective, then we calculate what that standby capacity cost is. It is calculated similar to a fixed meter charge in the sense that the larger the service line, the higher capacity or greater standby capacity is necessary. The calculation is different though. It's based on the demand characteristics or how much water can physically get through that pipe. So if we jump down to the bottom, that's a 12-inch pipe that is individually going into a facility, a building, a very large building that needs that level of fire protection. So that 12-inch line is the size of some of the lines running through your streets to provide service to a multitude of additional customers. So it's a very large service line that is there to meet those fire protection needs of those customers. So these have been updated based on the cost of service, the cost that were calculated to provide the standby capacity, and they're being increased as well based on the results of that analysis. 23 and 24 are then adjusted by the 5% overall. On slide 17, the next slide, we have a sample bill impacts. So looking at how on the top 3 lines, different single family residential customers' bills may be impacted. So somebody that's using 4 HCF or 400 cubic feet, their monthly bill would increase by $1.37 or 2.9%. For somebody using 10 HCF, then that bill would go up $6.23 or 5%, so right at that system average. And then a larger user using 20 HCF would have a 6.3% increase, and that's really based on the prioritization of the water supply and the cost of each of those water supplies and how those customers use water as they progress through those different tiers for single family. For a commercial customer using 70 HCF within their allotment, so in that first tier only of their rate with a 5/8 inch meter, they would see basically a 0.6% overall change. Somebody using over their allotment would see a 2.4% adjustment. And then when we look at our irrigation ag and irrigation rec, again with that transition, the recommended transition to cost of service results, then an irrigation agriculture using 205 HCF with a 1-inch meter would see about a 9.3% adjustment, and an irrigation rec with a 3/4 inch meter and using 825 HCF would see a 7.1. So very similar impacts to these customers based on the overall proposed transition and cost of service results. The next slide provides us a summary of the total single family monthly residential utility bill. So remember, this includes water, wastewater, solid waste, and the utility tax component. That's the small piece on top. So comparing what that current bill is today with the proposed increases in water that we talked about today, the proposed increases in wastewater that were adopted through the last Prop 218 process, and then the solid waste increase, that bill is going to increase overall from $247, almost $248 to $261, so 5.6% increase for the typical residential single-family home. On the next slide, we have our comparison that we talked about last time, again comparing the City of Santa Barbara's proposed rates with a 5/8 inch meter at those same usage levels, the 4 HCF, the 10 HCF, or the 20 HCF, to some of the other local regional water suppliers, so Goleta, Montecito, and Carpinteria Valley Water District. You can see here on the lower uses, the 4 HCF, it's on the lower end. When we go to the upper user or a higher user, it's on the higher end, and really that's based on those costs of water supply for those prioritized sources as we go through that from groundwater all the way up to desal. On the next slide, we have our next steps. So next slide. So overall, the recommendation here is to implement the cost of service results and the proposed rates as developed in the study. We're also recommending the phased approach for irrigation recreation and irrigation agriculture to minimize that impact, that bill impact to these customers, understanding there's a minimal loss of revenue in those first 2 years as part of this. And then ultimately next steps is bringing this back to the Finance Committee on March 30, based on the input and direction this morning, and then ultimately a public hearing on June 15th, where the council would go through the Prop 218 public hearing process, tally any protests, and then ultimately, if no majority protests, the council would have the ability or the authority to implement the rates. And with that, I will turn it back over to Chair Keller and staff to answer any questions that you all may have.
Thank you, Mr. Corn, and thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Any comments or questions at this point from the commissioners or Councilmember Sneddon? Thank you again for presenting this clearly. I think we've seen it a number of times. I think it helps to sort of go through the whole process and understand how this all developed. So thank you very much. Yes, Commissioner Cooney.
Yeah, no, I wanted to say this was really clear, and some of the questions I think that we asked in the last couple of weeks have really been addressed. And I just think it was a great presentation. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? If not, do we have any public comments?
Chair Keller, I don't see public comment, but let me go to the slide and see if anyone raises their hand. Okay, Chair Keller, I don't see any public comment at this time.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So I guess we're ready to vote on the recommendations. So if you want to put them back up so we have them there, and then if we can have a motion, please.
I move staff recommendation.
I'll
Do I have
second
a
that.
second? Thank you. Okay, so if we can do the roll call.
Yes, Commissioner Cooney,
Yes.
Commissioner Young,
Yes.
Vice Chair Davis,
Yes.
and Chair Keller.
Yes.
Thank you.
Chair Keller,
Okay,
I
well-
also just comment also. I also want to compliment staff on bringing us along for the meetings that they have. And I think the presentation now was very, very clear, and I hope it will really help educate the public. So thank you for the great presentation.
Thank you very much. So our next item is to talk about the sewer management plan and an update on our sewer management plan. So I believe, Ms. Flessy, please.
Yes. Thank you, Chair Keller. I'm excited to introduce Mr. Thomas Welch, our acting wastewater system manager, and Mr. Bradley Ware, our wastewater collection superintendent, which will be presenting our sewer system management plan update. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Keller and members of the Water Commission. My name is Thomas Welch. I'm the acting wastewater system manager. With me, I have Brad Rare, our wastewater collection superintendent, and we're here to update and recertify our sewer system management plan. And I'd like to hand this off to Brad. I will stay on if there's any questions as we go through the process.
Thank you, Thomas. Good morning, Chair Keller and the commissioners. I'm happy to be here today to walk us through the recertification process for our sewer system management plan. Next slide. So it should be a pretty short presentation today. There's only a few things that I'd like to highlight. We're going to go over kind of the background of why we do a sewer system management plan, what the requirements are. Highlight a few of the changes since the last time we presented this about 2 years ago to Water Commission and then ultimately to Council. So the 2018 sewer system management plan, and then review our recommendation. Next slide. So in 2006, the state adopted a general order through their sanitary sewer system, WDR, and the order really did two main things. Prior to 2006, there was a lack of requirements and paperwork needed to operate a sanitary sewer system. And so in 2006, they adopted this order, and for any collection system greater than 1 mile, they required them to do two things. The first was to develop a sewer system management plan. And then the second was to begin submitting all sanitary sewer overflow data into the state's centralized database called CWIX. CWIC stands for California Integrated Water Quality System. And so that is where we enter all of our spill data when it occurs. Next slide. So what exactly is the Sewer System Management Plan? It's a document that identifies 11 elements of requirements that the state requires us to submit. I commonly refer to this as sort of our operations business plan. It covers kind of our maintenance, operations, emergency response, and capital improvement plans. It also highlights our standard details, our construction design standards, and how do we generally operate and maintain this as our business. So in front of you, you have the 11 elements. The document's broken into 11 elements, and you can kind of see what it covers. The document itself is roughly 350 pages, so it would be exhaustive to go through the whole thing, but today I'm going to highlight a few of the changes that we've had. Next slide. So again, the Sewer System Management Plan is really considered a living document. The state wants it to be a living document. They want feedback, and they want to make sure that it doesn't just sit there on a shelf somewhere. So the document is available on our website, as well as through the state's centralized database, CWIC. So anybody who's interested in looking at this document, they can see the most recent adopted one available there. The state has a few requirements in their order. They require us to update it at least every 5 years to capture any significant changes. It must be recertified by our governing board. In our case, that would be City Council. And then every 2 years at a minimum, we need to go through that document to evaluate the effectiveness of the plans that are in that document, as well as compliance with the plan requirements. Those compliance, while the compliances haven't changed, the perspective or the auditors that look at the compliance requirements sometimes come in with a new perspective or angle with new information that they have from other agencies, and some of our improvement recommendations come from that, and I'll talk about those in a second. Next slide. So this kind of gives you an overview of the timeline of our past actions. As I stated, this started in 2006 with the initial order. There was an amendment in 2013, primarily focused on water quality monitoring, and so they increased some of the water quality monitoring requirements due to spills. So you can see on the timeline, we initially drafted the document in 2008. We've had a few recertifications and audits in the past, but today specifically I'm going to be talking about our recertification audit that happened in June of 2020. And staff over about the last 4 to 5 months have been working on capturing the audit report findings and making sure that our document is as polished as it can be. I should say that we did hire a consultant, HDR, to perform the audit for us. Their contract was executed in May of 2020, and shortly thereafter conducted the audit. Next slide. So the way the audit report is broken up is they identify major updates or what they call deficiencies, and then minor deficiencies. We had 2 major deficiencies, but nothing was really out of compliance. So that would be the worst case scenario if something was fully out of compliance. The 2 major deficiencies that they identified is our water quality monitoring plan could use a little bit of updating and enhancement, and then also our lift station and force main preventative maintenance plan requirement from the State Water Resources Control Board. And so I'm going to highlight the updates that were made there. But we also wanted to capture a major change that happened on how we conduct our closed circuit television program, or the CCTV inspection and condition assessment program that we have within my group. In 2020, we upgraded IT pipes, and so we wanted to capture the new business processes that are part of that new software that get implemented. Next slide. So with our water quality monitoring plan, the audit report indicated that the roles and responsibilities could be clarified better between my wastewater collection operations staff and the water resources lab. Specifically, some of the areas that they were kind of vague were in the response plan to assess the impact of sanitary sewer spills greater than 50,000 gallons. Fortunately for us, that would be a major spill, and we have not experienced one of those recently. And so that's why they said it's better to work through the plan now and develop those protocols for sampling and who's going to do what in the case that you ever did run into one of those. We also went through the process of making sure that we identified the protocols and roles and responsibilities for each of the lab staff as well as the operations staff, and when we would perform sampling in lieu of what the lab would do. We also clarified and updated the technical reporting requirements in the document so that it was clear who was doing what as far as the reporting. And then we also updated the new Water Resources Lab certification data and chain of custody forms so that the documentation was up to date as far as June 2020 goes. Next slide. So the other major deficiency was on our lift station preventative maintenance plan. Enforcement preventive maintenance plan. And what I want to highlight here is that it's not like we haven't had a document for this before. The auditors came in and they looked at it from a perspective that while we have a lot of great documentation on the condition of our lift stations and our force mains, we weren't capturing in our SSMP exactly how we were doing the preventative maintenance. And that's sort of an organizational barrier, if you will, because it's managed by a different group here at El Estero. And so we conducted a series of meetings to basically help record what they're doing out at the lift stations to improve the documentation that we have in our sanitary sewer management plan. So that was kind of it's a major change or look to the document in that area. But in reality, it's not like we're doing things now that we haven't been doing for the last several years. And in fact, I can assure you our lift stations are operating very well. We rarely have problems as far as sanitary sewer spills at the lift station, because we have a great staff that manage those. So we also highlighted the types of staff and the roles in supporting the plan. That wasn't clearly identified in previous documents. We also documented what the lift station maintenance staff's plan and workflow is for handling their work. They store a lot of their data in a system called Maintenance Connection, because it's a more complex facility than our sanitary sewer mains, and so we needed to gather some information from that system and put it in the document. And then we also highlighted some of the communication between the various groups on who's doing what. So again, the roles and responsibilities for lift stations. And this is a picture right here of our Villa Lucero lift station located on Villa Lucero, and it discharges to State Street through an easement. Next slide. And last but not least, staff felt it was important to update the documentation for our condition assessment and CCTV program. So in the past, we had a system for probably the last 12, 13 years called POSSUM. And POSSUM was a pipeline observation system management software that stored all of our CCTV data. And that system is a little antiquated now. And so we went out for an RFP in 2020 and selected a new system called IT Pipes. Some of you may recall hearing me present on that before. And so basically the document had a lot of legacy information as far as how workflows were captured in that software. So we converted all the workflows to an IT Pipes workflow. We also highlighted that the new IT Pipe system is cloud-based. It's accessible even outside the city network, so that's good for staff if they need to access the data when they're not tied to our network. And then we also highlighted some of the new reporting capabilities. The picture you see in front of you is a screenshot out of the software, and so it highlights the video. It also shows pictures from the inspection, and then it shows the distance and defect observed by staff. And so staff have been using this now pretty routinely since about October, November of 2020. And we continue to enhance those workflows as we go. Next slide. So that kind of goes over the majority of the major changes. The remainder of the other changes are fairly minor or are correcting staff names, roles, positions, things that might have changed since 2018. And so now we're heading into the recertification phase where we're hoping to go to council and get the document recertified. If we are successful in doing that, we would be looking at another audit here in 2022. That would be our 2-year cycle. What's interesting to note here, and that's why I wanted to include this slide in our presentation, is The state is currently going through an update to that general order that I mentioned was initially developed in 2006. They notified us in February this year that they're planning to move forward with it, with some form of adoption in 2021. And they have some workshops here coming up in April that Thomas Welch and myself will be participating in order to see what kind of impacts this new order would have to the work that we're doing with our sewer system management plan. And so right now we're here at Water Commission today. We plan to go to council on April 13th, 2021. And then we would be looking at an audit in June 2022, sometime down the road. So with that, next slide. Our recommendation today is that Water Commission help refer us on to council so that we can get the SSMP recertified as a consent item. With that, my presentation concludes, and I'm happy to be here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Rare, and thank you, Ms. Flessy. Do we have any comments or questions? Yes, Commissioner Young.
Thank you, Chair Keller. I just wanted to make a comment that, at least for the public that's watching this, that the wastewater treatment plant itself operates under a separate permit. And so this permit is specifically for the wastewater collection system, which the state started to require back in 2006, as Bradley told us about. And so, you know, it was meant to focus attention on wastewater collection itself, because it has been historically a source of contamination and pollution. And so this was a great presentation and very informative, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Commissioner Davis.
I was second the comment that just was made. Very nice presentation. I really actually appreciate it a great deal. And I appreciated the slide, the council recertify. The council agenda report draft that we have in our packet says approve the plan, but I'm assuming the action really is to recertify. So thank you for that clarification.
Any other questions or comments at this point? Okay, do we have any public comment?
Chair Keller, there is no public comment at this time.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So if we have a motion for the recommendation.
Okay, I recommend that that the Water Commission, I'll recommend council recertify the updated sewer system management plan.
Do I have a second? Thank you. So if we can have the roll call, please.
We don't hear you,
Yeah, we
Rachel.
can't hear you.
Can't hear you.
Can we have the roll call, please?
Can't hear me. Okay. Commissioner Cooney. Commissioner Young.
Yes.
Vice Chair Davis.
Yes.
And Chair Keller.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your presentation, and I think we have a very good recommendation. Okay, so if we can proceed then to our last item on the agenda is the Water Resources Manager's report. So Ms. Flessy, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Keller. So each month we present our monthly manager's report, and to kind of show where our water supply is, and then also with a lot where we are with our SLIP program, and also where we are with our COVID testing. So I'd like to start off. Does anyone have any questions about the report before I begin? I was just going to touch on a couple of highlights. Yes, Chair Keller.
I don't have a question. I just in case anyone has questions, but any questions or comments? Okay, so we go ahead with the highlight.
Sure. If we can proceed with we can move forward to. We're still doing well in our water demand. We're still conserving, as in our drought records show. And so what I wanted to highlight was our recycled water. If we can move to that graph. Keep going. Keep going. There we go. So we took down the recycled treatment plant in February for a scheduled repair. We scheduled that in February, hoping it would be a wetter month and least amount of demand. So I just wanted to show and highlight that, yes, we were blending water at the end of January and into February, and those repairs were successful. We were gearing up for the summer to make sure that we everything is copacetic and we are prepared for the summer demands without that breaking that we had been experiencing the past few years. For those that remember or weren't on the commission, with the recycle plant, we kept experiencing water hammer in our piping system, and last year we were able to reprogram a lot of our valves and we reduced and almost eliminated a lot of that water hammer. So what we did in February is we changed out a lot of the piping that was kind of really damaged from that water hammer and on the verge of breaking. So we just changed out a lot of those weaker points. Now we should have a more reliable system, more robust system as we head into the spring and summer months. Okay, if we can move forward to the COVID graphs. There's our COVID graph. So we are going up and down in our peaks. It could be a number of things. It could be our sampling. It also could be we had a 3-day weekend, MLK weekend. We also had the Super Bowl kind of added to the spike. What will really be interesting in March is how we see other holidays like St. Patrick's Day, which was yesterday, or the reopening of items. And it will actually be really interesting how we see this graph over the time, whether the vaccines, whether we are keeping up with our vaccinations, with our openings. So it'll be really interesting. Any questions?
Okay. Thank you very much. As always, this graphic is interesting, and it's got surprises and things that, we're still trying to figure out how to best interpret. I had a question more on, and we didn't touch it much, but we had very little rainfall, and Cachuma storage, it continues to go down. So what are your thoughts in terms of what that means for us if we don't get any? I mean, we've had very little rain, but if we don't get anything by the end of this water year?
Well, desal has really allowed us to store water in Cachuma. So that is the great thing. We have really been able to save a lot of our Cachuma water. And so this coming year, our water supply is pretty stable because of that.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments for Ms. Plessy? Okay, I think that is it. So thank you very much, Ms. Plessy, for your presentation. And do we have any final comment? No. Yeah, okay. So, well, thank you everybody for this Water Commission meeting of March 18th, and we will be back here in April. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.